Small, and it was a rainy day in New York today, huh, Professor?
Yeah, it was like, and I had to drive home from Brooklyn in that rain, But it's all good. It's all good.
Definitely, definitely. So let's talk a little bit about spirituality. There's, that's probably one of the religion is probably one of the most divisive tools. Not that it's bad, but it can be used as a form of division. Where I worship this God and I despise you, I hate you, I know nothing about you, but I just know that you worship another God. So we in the conscious community, what we call the conscious community, we have been trying to get to the root of all of this for a long time. We got brothers like Aswa Kwesi, Walter Williams, Dr. Phil Valentine, the list goes on and on, yourself and many others who have tried to tie all the religions together and show everybody how they're actually related to each other. So with that being said, let's start out with this. One of the most powerful images in humanity in the last thousands of years is Jesus, my brother. Jesus, that whoever that dude was, that motherfucker is popping. You know what I'm saying? That entity, Jesus Christ or Jesus or whatever, man, that's a popular dude right there. You got Michael Jackson that after Michael Jackson is Jesus. You know what I'm saying? Michael Jackson is close to Jesus, but Jesus got him by, he got him. Talk to me about who is, from your study, the African voodoo and the ancient mystery systems, who exactly is Jesus, Professor James Small?
Well, Jesus is not a who. That's the first problem.
Okay.
First thing, let's look at the definition of religion. What does the word mean? It comes from the Greek word re, to do over or go back, and ligio, to bind. So the word religion means bind back to something. And what you're trying to bind back to is a body of information that is supposed to help you build your character to an optimal level so that you be more godlike. That's what it. And what these books like Bibles and Quran and Torah, they show you examples of people supposedly in history who paid devotion to this thing called God, quote unquote, and the rewards for playing devotion and the consequences for not. You see? And they have the ethical and moral teachings on how to behave and how to do the good thing and the right thing. And they've got stories that are examples of this. That's basically what the books are about. And some of it is, repetitive and that sort of thing. But just remember the term religion means to bind back. What should a people bind back to? And you should bind back to the history and culture of your ancestors. So if you're binding back to the history and the culture of somebody else's ancestors, anything may happen to you. Okay? So the institution we know as Christianity is 21 years old. That's not a long time, Kemet, that kingdom in Northeast Africa along the Nile lasted for more than 35,000 years and didn't know anything about Jesus. There are kingdoms in South Africa that was over 100,000 years, didn't know anything about Jesus. Jesus is the European interpretation of the model God-like person, and the life story that they've given to him is to demonstrate how one should behave and what sacrifice you should make and what consequence should come from your life if you are devoted to what is called God. And, when you use a human being or an animal to symbolize ideas, concepts, and principles. And Jesus is a set of ideas, concepts, and principles, not a person. But in the ancient days, they didn't have cameras, they didn't have videos, and most people, 99% of people, didn't read or write. So the way you taught them was through either drawings, paintings, or sculpting, and storytelling, oral tradition. And so Jesus became the symbol by which people learn how to be human and godly. After most of the then world that the Europeans know, because Jesus is a European phenomenon as we know it, even though it comes out of an African school of thought. And so it's when the European gets it, they're an ignorant society, they're an illiterate society. So they have to find a way of teaching people the concepts and ideas and principles that they few learned people are learning from Africa. And they created a fantastic tool, Jesus. And the document around him, which is called the Bible, which is started in 325 AD, the writing of it, it takes them about 700 years to finish it. But that document with that central character, and the document also includes what we call the Torah or the Old Testament, but the central character in Christianity is Jesus. And he represents a set of concepts, ideas, and principles on how the God-man or the God-woman should behave. And what is the consequence and the rewards of behaving that way or not behaving that way. And this was told in a set of stories that's written about his life supposedly by the disciples, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But no one have any historical proof that any of those people wrote any of that stuff. Because when the Bible is being written, it's 325 years after the events of his life. But who the hell is around 325 years later to tell the story? So what is the story then? The story is not about an individual at all. It's an old African story about cosmology and ecology being told using anthropomorphism, using a human being to represent, and human beings to represent those things. So the church as we know it, the Catholic Church, was founded, that's the mother church of most of Christianity. But there's a church before the Catholic Church by 500 years, which is called the Byzantine Church or the Eastern Orthodox Church. This exists before the Catholic Church. And when it exists, it doesn't have a Bible yet. They're trying to write it, right? Mm-hmm. The church we call the Ethiopian Church doesn't come up out of Africa directly. The Ethiopian Church comes out of two other organizations, the Coptic Church of Egypt and the Byzantine Church of Asia Minor, or what we call the Northern Middle East. And that Ethiopian Church is itself 500 years older than the Catholic Church. And the Protestant churches, the Lutheran, the Baptist, the Methodist, these churches are 1,000 years younger than the Ethiopian Church. Now, though Ethiopia borrowed this ideology, because that's what it is, it's a cultural ideology, it borrows a lot of it from the Coptic Church in Egypt and the Byzantine Church in what is now Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, that area. It imbues its own African thing into it, because the Byzantine Church and the Coptic Church comes out of Africa to start with, but we didn't call them churches, okay? And I wanted to get that out there without making it too complex, because it's important that people study the timeline. And you can look these timelines up on the computer. You can Google them, shit. You don't have to do no deep research to see what I just said. But it's important to know the timeline because then you'll understand the power of the Jesus Christ, because Jesus Christ is only powerful in the world because somebody brought it on the barrel of the gun. And they murdered nearly 1 billion people over the last 2,000 years to implement Jesus as the primary God character. It isn't that people loved it and converted to it. People were forced to do this. But this is all they got now, most people, because they don't have access to the information of what they had before they were forced into this thing. And obviously, it's beautiful and it sounds good, but as messed up as the world is, it tells you it doesn't work. You know?
Now, Professor, what would you say, though? I know individuals who are making great achievements in their life, and whether it's business-wise, whether it's family-wise, whether it could be something miraculous happens with their health, and they give all praises due to Jesus. They pray to Jesus, and they... Now, okay, so let me finish, Professor. So they have a problem in their life. What they know is that they pray to this entity called Jesus, and they get results. So how do you, there's got to be something real about Jesus for these individuals to be getting results. Or maybe we have a misunderstanding about, our own power, but what exactly goes on where they get results to
there's nothing
that doesn't
real
even
about
exist?
Jesus. So we don't play with our own heads. The Shinto man in Japanese prayed to Shintoism and he gets the same results.
Right.
The Buddhist man in India prays to Buddhism and he gets the same result. The voodoo man in Haiti prays to voodoo and he gets the same result. And there's no Jesus involved in any of them. So it's not about the image. You can use any image you want. All right? You can call it what you want. You can use any image you want. This is about the human mind and its relationship to its environment. And even the story of Jesus is about that. But since the white man colonized the information about human relationship to the divine, and he colonized it and called it Christianity. And then he gives it a central figure called Jesus. And then he makes that figure a white man, the image of the greatest murderer in the history of the world, the image of the greatest rapist in the history of the world, the image of the greatest robber in the history of the world. And when you worship Jesus, you can say, I'm not worshiping the white man, but if you got the image of the greatest rapist, the greatest robber, the greatest murderer, so if you're getting some good things happening to you, the drug dealer, I know drug dealers that never went to the penitentiary and didn't die from an OD and got wealthy and built all kinds of businesses. They weren't praying to Jesus. Okay? I know people who got away with murder. They didn't, that ain't Jesus. So that's not, see, what the problem is the thing called religion to bind back. What are you binding back to? Are you binding back to the body of information, or are you binding back to the culture of the murderer, robber, rapist, imprisoner, and enslaver? And if you look at our behavior and how many of our own people we killed in the last 30 years, African Americans have murdered more than 300,000 other African Americans, and all of those, 99% of those murderers were Christians, Black Christians. So we need to look at the real picture and look in the real mirror and ask the real question. But let me come back to the religion and not get too far off of it. When Christianity was founded as we know it, and that as we know it is the phenomena that comes out of the Roman Catholic Church. And in the 1500s, Martin Luther break away from that and created the Protestant churches. And most of our people are part of those Protestant churches, especially as it manifested in England, the Methodist Church, the Baptist Church, and then the ones that followed in America, the Holiness Church and the Seventh-day Adventists and all of this was broke away from the Methodist and the Baptist churches. But all of them used the same Bible, and all of them talked about the same Jesus. Any form of worship will bring results if it allows you, if the document you're studying allows you to build good character.